Welcome into Running It Straight here for your Wednesday, the 23rd of August, 3 minutes past 2. Great to be talking some rugby league between now and 3 o'clock. The YouTube stream catching up to me in the studio. If you are on YouTube, big shout out to you as well. You can drop a comment there, or you can text us on 8833. Always love your questions and your feedback coming through throughout the hour. And around about 10 minutes' time, we're going to catch up with Sione Faumuina. Of course, he was part of the 03 Warriors team following that 02 grand final. He was there for Old Boys Day on Friday, so we want to talk to him about how special that was. And also just, I guess, what he's seeing in and around the club at the moment, and more importantly, Kempy, what is required when it comes to finals football, because that 03 team was just one step away from making back-to-back grand finals, so he'll know all about.
It was building, Sammy. It was building. It wasn't 03. It was 04, 05, 06. It would have won a grand final, I reckon. I'd like to ask him that question. What's his thoughts on that? Because I know what mine are. But Sione, he's very good at analysing games. I wonder if his thoughts were the same back in those early days.
Yeah, well, we'll find out in about 10 minutes' time when we get him on the show. Texts coming in as well. We'll get to those at around about 2:30, so keep all your questions coming. Plenty on the team that's been named for this weekend against the Dragons on Friday night. But as we always do, we open the show having a look back just on the game from the weekend, and it was the Warriors getting over the Manly Seagulls courtesy of a Maratania Kore try with 7 minutes to go, as well as a Sean Johnson field goal. 29 points to 22. They get the job done. Kempy, the first half felt a little bit like the Warriors we've seen over the last couple of weeks. A much better second half. They didn't let Manly score at all, but they did allow quite a bit in that first half, especially on that left edge.
Yeah, it was. Look, it was a very fast-moving game because the referee kept the ruck tidy all the time. You know, he was penalising the ruck. He was getting them off early, getting that reset count started, and people were getting the momentum going into the position on the football field either time. And on the back of those errors, it was a little bit like a game of touch. One team would score, they'd go back to the other end of the pitch, they'd make an error, the other team would score, and it was tit for tat for that whole of the first half. We talked about it at half time, Sammy, what both coaches were doing. Were they talking about cleaning up the error rate and playing that position on the football field, and thankfully the Warriors did the better of the latter in the second half. So again, it's an ugly win. It's the third on the trot against the Titans and Tigers and Manly. Manly were right to get that game. They were fighting for their lives and trying to remain in the eight. The contentious part, obviously, you got Garrett coming out today saying that he broke his back on that fall from the tackle from Shans Nickel-Klokstad, and it's an unfortunate part of the rule, but unfortunately it is the rule. So the referee's not making an error in that judgment there, and of course on the back of it, Marata Noakore goes through on that right edge. Garrett can't get to him, Ruben can't get to him, and you know, they go on and win the game, and Sean ices it with a field goal with a couple of minutes to go. So I'm really happy that the Warriors are still in that top four. Happy that they're third. I'm just now starting to consider which would be the better game, the game against Penrith, the game against Brisbane. But we'll know a bit more about it next week. It's, mate, people talking about, you know, whether or not that left edge, like you said, was scratchy. But it is scratchy. You know, we've got to fix it up.
A lot of heat comes on Marcelo Montoya and Adam Pompey as sort of the last two men, but I think it does start a bit further in as well. Kempy, I think Luke Metcalf's making a couple of bad reads as well, flying up out of the line. So I mean, a lot of time people do lump the blame on those sort of outside edges, but I think it does start further and further. You always talk about that as well. So, you know, there might just be, you know, more than one fix, I think, than what people are thinking. A big question that's coming in a lot, Kempy, I think after the weekend, given we've only got 2 rounds to go, and it is looking like the Warriors are going to finish inside that, well, they are going to finish inside that top 4. We'll talk about this after 2:30, but everyone asking who's the better matchup. Is it Brisbane at Suncorp? Is it the Panthers at Bluebet Stadium? We'll talk about that after 2:30. We'll get really stuck into that question. Another one that's just quickly coming as well says, hey lads, Sean Johnson and Kempy, why don't they talk? Taking that assumption from the social media videos that were posted on the SENZ page, would love to hear from SJ on the season. I'll answer from my perspective, Kempy, then you give your thoughts. Firstly, look, Sean, I think probably this late in his career, you know, doesn't do as much media as perhaps he used to do in the past. I know he's been burned by the media, and so in that regard, he doesn't, I guess, like doing it. Look, I'll shine a little bit of a light on it. Whenever you ask the Warriors for a player, it's almost universally anyone but Sean Johnson. He just doesn't really say yes to requests. So that's first and foremost has nothing really to do with you, Kempy. It's more just the fact that I just think he's an extremely hard player to get to, which, like that text is saying, is a shame. We'd love to hear from Sean. We'd love to get him on to talk about the season. We'd love to talk about how he's tracking. It's all positive at the moment for the Warriors, so I'm not sure why you wouldn't. But Kempy, do you want to offer a thought on?
Look, I get that he wants to keep everything to a minimum. He is hot property at the moment. He does stand-up conferences every once a month, I think it is, down there at the Warriors. So he does get to talk to the media, albeit on his terms, and that's fine. He's a superstar of the team. He's headed towards a Dally M, hopefully. I just think like a few people have made a little bit out of my comments last year on saying that Sean wasn't at his best last year and possibly it was going to be his last season and that he'd possibly retire. And I think that may have been taken the wrong way. But when you look at the Warriors, and I've been doing this for a number of years now, Sammy, calling when you were on the other radio station and working with you there, I often call things how I see it. And I was one of many people that thought that probably the COVID period was, Sean not playing at his best and maybe we'd never see him play as well again. But as the champion that he is, he's come out and he's absolutely owned the season. And he's owned it for the Warriors and he's got them in a top 4 spot. And a lot has to go down to the way that Sean Johnson has managed his side. Whether he wants to talk to me or not, that's by the wayside. I'm here and giving my opinion on football, whether it's good or bad, whether you like it or you're not, I'm not really bothered. But the thing is, it's a measured opinion, and if we do get a chance to talk to him, I'm in the same boat as Sam. Well, we get given who we get given, and we've requested Sean on a number of occasions, but it's always in front of a conference, and whether or not he's going to talk to journalists on their own, who knows? Whether he's going to run around next year, who knows? You see people come out, and we've only seen 2 of them last week come out and retire on the spot. We've had enough this year, so I'm just happy that he's playing so well, mate. I'm real happy that he's up for Dally M. I think he's close to a shoo-in for that. One
thing that I've always loved about you, Kempy, is that you're not obviously afraid to throw your opinion out there and say anything, but also that you're not afraid to backtrack if the evidence presents itself. I think what quite often in New Zealand, what people love to actually it applies media-wise all around the world, but what people love to do is if you say one thing and then it gets proven wrong, a month, a year, 3 years later, people love to pile on for something you've said. But that's what makes the rugby league media circus so good, Kempy. I even had someone talking to me about this morning, saying the 360 boys talking about Latrell Mitchell and how he played lazy, and here's the evidence and here's the video. A very, very strong, hard opinion, but that's what makes rugby league so interesting. You've got all these talking points, you've got all these opinions, all these views. If we took that away, we'd end up like another code.
Rugby.
You'd end up like another code which has no talking points and absolutely no personality. So look, we throw opinions out there, we get them wrong. I've already said, Kempy, I want to be proven wrong with my grand final theory. I want to be proven wrong, and I'll come on and I'll apologise. But this is what makes it fun. It's what makes it enjoyable to talk about. As long as it never gets personal, I don't think it ever does.
That's the main thing.
It's always about what happens on the field. So look, like I said, after 2:30, we're going to chat heaps about who the Warriors might meet in the playoffs and what their road to a potential grand final. Lots of messages coming in here on the YouTube. You can text through as well on 8833. There's a poll on the YouTube as well saying, should the Aussie bosses send Sam and Kempy to the grand final? Should a certain New Zealand team make it? 100% in favour so far, Kempy.
Let's start up a, what do you call those things? Like
petition.
A petition.
Change.org.
Hey, do you guys want us to go there and call the game at the grand final for you? You better start getting it in here to SENZ.
We'll start a
Get
petition.
On that 8833.
Now, just before we take a break and get to Sione Faumuina, Kempy, I just want to make sure that we sort of clarify our roles here this afternoon. That if you're going to disagree with me, I want you to actually disagree with me, unlike what you said on Saturday when you supposedly disagreed with the NRL bunker.
Look, I'm not disagreeing with the bunker on that, but I actually think he got that wrong. I think Garrett got.
Then you would be disagreeing with him.
Well. Yeah. How many times are you going to remind me of that?
No, I just want to clarify, Kempy, where we sit. If you're disagreeing with me, doesn't mean you agree with me, because I need to know that now, just moving forward.
Oh, but mate, half the time I don't even know whether I'm disagreeing with myself. I'm so confusing. I'm such a confused
Is that just the
person.
bunker? Is it just related to the bunker,
Well,
maybe?
the next thing I'm waiting for is Sean Edwards to come out. Is he going to come out today as well?
No, I don't have that on there, actually. I do have the newborn joke that you made, but we'll leave that for a little bit later on. We'll take a break. If you've got any questions for Sione Faumuina, please text those through 8833 or jump on the YouTube comment section as well. But we'll take a short break when we come back. Sione Faumuina is going to join us on Running It Straight. Welcome back into Running It Straight here on SENZ, 18 minutes past 2. Kempy, the poll for sending us to the grand final, 100% with us. So very much in favour of us heading over to Sydney. Hope the big bosses are listening. Right, very special guest on the line now, a former Warrior who joined that team back in 03 following the grand final. Kempy was there for Old Boys Day on Friday as well, so we're going to catch up, talk to him a little bit about that, as well as how the Warriors are tracking in 2023. We've just got 2 rounds to go, and finals football is well and truly alive and well. It is Sione Faumuina, and he joins us on the line now. Kia ora, Sonny.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, mate, how was it last week? Big occasion for Daniel Anderson's having the stadium named after, but also catching up with the old boys. A good night?
Yeah, it was. It was always good. It's always a good night, the old boys. I guess it was even made more special being it dedicated that round and obviously the stadium to Ando. And then there were a couple of guys that I hadn't seen in a while. So, Brent Webb came over from Sydney, as well as one of the old trainers from back in the day. So, no, overall, it was an awesome experience.
Sione, you were there for our run in 2003 where we got knocked out by Penrith in that last game before the major preliminary final. Mate, when you're looking at the Warriors now heading into the last 2 weeks of the season, do you think they're up for a final series, given that they haven't been there for a while?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I think, the Warriors, from past experience, especially when I was there, they've always been a confidence team, and they've got all the confidence in the world going for them. So if they carry on this momentum leading into the playoffs, I think, yeah, they will definitely step up to the plate and perform at that level. Even though they haven't been there, for a number of years, I think the momentum is just too strong for them not to leverage off of that.
What's, going back to those years, Sione, where, you're part of teams that went deep into finals runs. What's different about the finals? For this team who obviously have the skill, they've got the ability, they've won enough games finding themselves in the top 4, but we know when it comes to finals time, particularly for those teams that have been there before, it's just a different kettle of fish. In the years where perhaps, teams that you were with struggled or were knocked out, what was it that sort of went wrong? Where did it slip up for you?
Well, to answer your first part, finals footy, it is a totally, different ball game. Mentally, how you prepare, the added pressure, right? It's because you've trained so hard for so long, gone through the regular season to now be at the, in the playoffs. It's an awesome experience, to be honest, man. Like there's nothing like it, being able to play finals footy. It's another level above regular season, and as each week goes on and you carry on into the playoffs, it just gets even harder and more mentally tough, right? I can remember back, Kempy, to when we played the Raiders before we went on to Penrith. Man, that to this day, that was one of the most mentally and physically draining games I've ever been involved with in my whole rugby league career. It was, and then I'm not saying using it as an excuse, but man, that really took a lot out of us leading into the game against the Panthers the following week. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the club. I'm excited for the supporters that the lads are now getting ready to smash this playoffs. Are
you happy with the last 3 weeks? Like, they haven't won pretty. It's been, grafting wins. They've stuck with the teams, especially Manly. It could have gone either way at the 6-minute mark. Sione, with that penalty had gone against Chancellor Clockstead on Ruben Garrick. Are you happy that they have the team to actually go for a good run through the finals?
I am. I actually believe they do have the the manpower and the firepower to have a good crack at the playoffs. Yep, like you said, Kempy, the last 3 weeks probably hasn't been the prettiest, but they've won. Yeah. So just that alone is enough for them to gain that confidence and that momentum. I truly believe that the squad they have now will rise to the occasion. There's enough big name players in there now. Adam's having a great season, Sean, Dallin, that the rest of them will start to elevate once they get into the playoffs.
I guess being around the club, specifically last week, Sione, catching up with those old boys and just seeing the buzz around Go Media Stadium at Mount Smart, can you, I guess, draw any similarities to those teams you were a part of back in the early days? Because it feels like, the Warriors over the last, particularly the last 4 or 5 years with that COVID period, just hasn't felt like the Warriors that we once knew and loved. Does it feel similar to those teams you were involved with back in the day?
Yeah, it does. It really does. When I look back at the early 2000s, when we made the playoffs, the grand final, 02-03, the whole club as an organisation was on song, right? From the top all the way through to the players, through to all the staff. That's what I felt, within that time. Going back for the old boys' day, it's the same feeling. They've created obviously this environment now that encapsulates the whole organisation, that everyone is on the same page. Everyone is rowing in the same direction. And then to see all the fans now starting to pack out, Go Media Stadium, it definitely does bring back those memories of the early 2000s.
And how, you're someone that's been passionate about the club for years and years, Sione. How happy does it make you? And I guess how hard has it been over the last 10 years, to, I guess, see the club go through some of the patches that it has gone through? Because it has been tough, for former players, for fans to witness some of the lowest points in the club's history last year in particular, finishing, equal worst record we've ever finished. How hard has that period been? And also how happy has it made you to see them where they are this year?
Yeah, it's definitely been a tough period. Obviously, being an old boy of the club, seeing them go through those years where they weren't as successful, but to see them where they are now, it's awesome. Being an old boy when they were going through those lean years, always getting stopped, always getting asked, "What's wrong with them? What's wrong with them? When is it our year?" And I'm just going, "Oh, it's coming," because there's so much talent. Here in New Zealand and Aotearoa for the Warriors to be successful. It was just being able to provide having the right pieces to the puzzle, all connecting, all on song. And once that is able to, be achieved, the Warriors, they're a dynasty waiting to happen. And
100%.
I believe that this is the start of it. I believe that this is 100% the start of it. And the crazy thing is they haven't really, I believe, even fulfilled their fullest potential, right? And so that's the scary part, which is what I'm hoping that as each game goes on in the playoffs, they're just going to keep growing and keep growing.
I said that I was going to ask you this question, Sonny. I haven't asked a player before as a coach when I was during that period between 2001, 2006. But when you were in that mix in 2003, and you saw that side that we had together, what are your thoughts on if we could have held them together for another 3 years? Do you think that we had a chance of bringing home a title? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, yep, I really do. In my opinion, and in my heart, Kempi, yes, I believe that we could have brought a title. We weren't far off. There were some little tweaks that I think needed to be done. But in terms of the talent, in terms of the skill level and the squad that we had, 100% we could have brought home a title. And I really do believe that had we kept, the main core of players together. Because 2003, although we fell short of making the grand final, remember that year we played the Kangaroos at North Harbour Stadium. We had 11 Warriors boys in that Kiwi side. Let's not, and I always bring that up because I don't know if that feat would ever happen again, Kempi.
No.
Right? 11 guys from the one club representing New Zealand, and we smashed the Kangaroos that year, right? So, and for me, and you need to talk to Clinton Tolpe, guys, because he's as passionate about this because he always comes from the point of view, yes, Sione, yeah, that's great, but we didn't win a championship. We didn't win our premiership, and I agree. But he's always vocal around, man, had we just kept it together, we could have definitely built that dynasty or started that movement and potentially had won a premiership.
Yeah.
But everything happened for a reason, and I believe we had to go through that and everything that we've done up until this moment to see where the club is right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Sione, just talking about that dynasty waiting to happen, because it did feel like that back in those years. And then, of course, we sort of went through it again with Ivan in 2011. You're just looking at this now going, man, I hope we've learnt from those two, previous experiences and the way we handled coaching and that sort of stuff. Just hope that this is heading in the right direction. Mate, a question that's come through a lot on our text machine here, and it was interesting you talked about that Raiders game and how much it took out of you. A lot of people asking if Webby should think about resting some guys heading into the final rounds just to make sure they're fresh for playoffs. What do you reckon, as a former player who's been through that? Do you need just a little bit of a freshen up before playoffs, or would you rather play every game to make sure that consistency and that sort of mental ability is there?
Yeah, look, if I can use the 2002 season as a barometer, I would say no. Because that's what Endo did, right? He rested the key boys in the last game of the round, and then we ended up winning the minor premiership. So I believe we shouldn't rest them. And if you're going to ask someone like Adam to rest, man, I'll be filthy. Like, if I was him, I'd be like, no, because we got to keep the momentum going. We got to, you just got to play your best team when it comes into the playoffs. Yep, these last two games, because they could still potentially finish second. Right? Yeah. Or they could finish fifth. Those two spots are game changers when it comes to the playoffs. So they should play their best team leading into the playoffs. That's my opinion, in order to keep that momentum going.
Mate, just before we let you go, you're doing some wonderful things off the field too. We saw you on Match Fit, and that's a great story that you went through with that. And you're also just putting together a pilot for a podcast. Just tell us a little bit about that before you go.
Yeah, so I'm just launching a pilot vodcast. It's a video series that will obviously be turned into a podcast called Unspoken. It's an idea that came off the back of Match Fit. So, all of us boys that were on there, we had like a 10-minute segment where we got to share our backstories. And I found that most of the public really resonated with those stories. And so Unspoken is just taking that to another level and being able to sort of add more context around some of our athlete stories that people may not be aware of. So we're shooting our first pilot this Saturday, bringing down our first guest to Rotorua, show him this great place. And then, I gave it away to him. And then we'll be looking at launching that in the next couple of weeks.
Well, that's awesome, Sione. You're doing some great things, and mate, let's just hope that works out well for you. Just like it did back in 2002, 2003, and they can emulate that here 20 years later, 2023, when the Warriors go for that run through the finals. Thanks a lot for joining us this afternoon, mate. You go well.
You too. Thanks, guys.
There you go, Sione Faumuina. Great to have him as part of the show, and some awesome thoughts just on finals football there, Kempy, and what the club's been doing right and what they need to keep doing to continue that success. He is one of those sort of legendary names when you talk about the Warriors. You mentioned Sione Faumuina. I still imagine Rabs' commentary in the background as well, with the basketball pass as well.
Over the back to Ivan Tomovavi.
Yeah, just amazing. We're going to take a break for news, sport and weather. When we come back, we'll bust through a bunch of your questions. Lots coming in on the YouTube channel as well as on 8833. Keep them coming. We'll go to our mailbag, our question bag after news, sport and weather with Johnny Mack. We're running it straight 27 minutes away from 3. If you missed that chat with Sione Faumuina, well worth going and looking on the podcast channel, running it straight to go and have a listen back to that. Right, time to get through a couple of your questions. We will have a look at the Warriors-Dragons game this Friday night, have a look at the two teams too. But perhaps we can start with this one from Cameron. I've lost the top of it, but it's about basically Jackson Ford being put on the bench for this weekend. Is that a case of resting him, given he plays 80 minutes every week, or is it to shore up that left D? And a follow-up question, is there something more to why Mitch Barnett isn't playing, or is the laceration worse than first thought? Well, I'll just quickly answer the Mitch Barnett one, Cameron. So he did get, I think it was just stitches. It might have been a little bit of a surgery on his knee. I haven't heard anything else, but I imagine it's just maybe that needs a bit more time to heal, and that's why he hasn't been making the starting squad. But I'll do a bit of digging for you, Cameron, see if I can get a more concrete answer. But in terms of Jackson Ford, Kemp going to the bench for Friday night, do you read anything into that at all? Or?
No, not at all. I actually think there'll be a few more changes to that start on side, run on side come Friday night. I think, like Dallin was pretty sore on Friday night with that right knee. Does he start? Tamari Martin's been named an extended bench. Does he come through to the bench? Lussick go in and gets Wade Ing, and I think Wade Ing is carrying a little bit of an injury as well. So I wouldn't really read into the team that's been named, because coaches on it, they got to name it on Tuesday. It's part of the NRL requirements. It doesn't mean that that's the side that plays. And at the moment, there's a bit of movement happening. So up until an hour before kickoff, you're not really going to know where they're playing with. The one with Mitch Barnett too, mate. When you get a cut on your knee, because I've had one of those, you can't do anything. Because every time you move and run, it just opens up. So you've got to be really careful with that, and of course you've got dirt and the chance of infection. And if you get in a little bit of an infection in there, it could play havoc with you for a few weeks. So they'll be just managing that, because they don't want to lose him come the first week of September. He's very important to that middle of the park.
Webby also loves Kempy making those changes before kickoff, so I wouldn't put it past him to be playing a little bit of mind games there with the Dragons. James says, Kempy and Sam, thoughts on the breaking news that Ian Foster is trying to get DWZ for the Rugby World Cup? Also, there is a rumour that Izzy had hair like DWZ when he was 15. You might be able to answer the second part of that question.
Get him for the Rugby World Cup, please. He's got no chance of making the All Black side. But as far as the hairdo goes, well, yeah, Izzy sort of did have a little bit of curl about him, didn't he, in his younger days?
Okay, yeah.
But it
wasn't fake, was it?
See, if you go back, okay, so that haircut of Dallin that everyone's raving on about, mate, Kevin Edel rocked that.
Yeah.
He absolutely rocked that big wavy light hair at the back in the day.
Was his natural, or?
Of course it was, yeah. And the king of that type of hair is obviously Tawara Nico.
Yeah.
You know,
I do remember Tawara, but he didn't have the mullet. Oh, he did. No, he did. I guess he did. Yeah.
No, he had the Mohican mullet. So you talk about Peppenhausen and those guys rocking off of Joe Dirt.
The little chook.
No one rocked it like Tawara Nico.
Oh, that's true. Jared Ford says, let's go Warriors. I don't know if that's Jackson under an alias. Alan says, Kempy breaking out the guns for running it straight. He does it on a weekly basis.
Come on.
Yeah, he tenses them as well, which is a bit desperate. Jonathan says, if we stay where we are on the table...
I'll tell you what's desperate is me having to work with you. That's desperation,
Settle down,
mate.
Tony. Settle down, Anthony. If we stay where we are on the table, who will we be playing and where, Jonathan? Oh, actually, there's a good chance just to quickly clarify the finals format for people who maybe haven't watched league, for a while, or you're new to the sport. So it's an interesting system. They brought in, how long ago was it now? 7 or 8 years ago?
It's a little while ago. It's not like yesterday.
No, so basically top 8, you split it into 2. You got your 1 to 4 and your 5 to 8. The 1 to 4 play each other in the first round. The 5 to 8 play each other. So 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, 5 plays 8, 6 plays 7. Now, if you're in the top 4 and you lose that first week, you go on to the second week where you play the winner of the 5 to 8 games. So there'll be 2 winners there, and they'll go up against the 2 losers from the top 4. They play each other, and then on the third week, the winners of those 2 will then play those original top 4 winners from week 1. So if you finish in the top 4, you get a life. You also get a home final, whether that is in week 2 or week 3 or week 1. And if you finish 5 to 8, you are an elimination game for the whole playoffs. So round 1, 2, 3. Every single one is an elimination game.
And that's the most important part of the competition. If you're 5 to 8, you're eliminated every week.
Yep.
And hence the reason why no one's ever won it from 5th to 8.
Yeah.
It's always the top 4 that win it, because you get a life and you get a home game and you get a week off. So if Penrith play Melbourne on today's schedule.
And we play Brisbane.
And we play
at
Brisbane.
Suncorp.
We win. and Penrith win, we have a week off, and the other two go and play the winners of the 5 to 8. But then they've got to travel to the losers of 1 to 4, and they've got to try and beat them at home. And then the NRL take over from there and run the big semis into the final. So no one's ever done it from 5, 6, 7 or 8, and that's the key.
I want to talk to you about the resting players, Kempy, and then we'll move on quickly to who we want to meet in the playoffs. A lot of questions on that one. But just one in here from James that said, thoughts on the media heat put on Latrell Mitchell over his average effort over the past weeks. Warranted, or are the Aussies looking for a story?
Well, I think there's the understanding that he is a marquee player first and foremost. So it isn't, some back block bloke that's just running around in first grade. It's Latrell Mitchell. Latrell Mitchell's top 5 player in the competition. All right, so when he's not performing, the blowtorch comes on, and I've got to say they need to sort him out. Like he's that week that he's getting off this week could cost them a chance of making the 8.
Yeah.
So they'll go in against Sydney City in the last round, and it could be a game that they need to win to play to get in the 8. They wouldn't have to do that if he was playing this weekend.
Yeah.
So he's got to stop doing these little misdemeanours that are costing his team and ultimately costing his club. Is it fair? Mate, it's part of if I can answer this question honestly, it's part of the territory, and we've got to stop doing that. All right? We've got to stop saying, is it fair? The journalists are part of the game, and they have a right to write an opinion piece about players, and players have to get used to it. Okay? Now, players have their own TV in their hand every day, 24/7, and they do. I'll never forget the story. I think I've told you, Sam, when Shaq O'Neal retired and announced it on his own platform. He didn't go to the media and all that. He announced it on his own platform, and they blew up. They said, well, how come you can come to us? He said, well, I don't need it. I've got 50 million followers. Now, he's basically the benchmark of media, because he's saying, well, I understand both. I've got it. This is my job to do, and by the way, I can do it myself because I've got it. Well, we're not Shaq O'Neal, but we've got the media in our hands, and we've also got our own media in the hands, and you've got to take the good with the bad. Now, if he's playing really good and he's a star, everyone
loves him.
SJ at the moment, everyone loves him. He's getting good things.
Totally.
Now, you've got to accept the bad with the good.
Yeah, and you also accept $1 million as well. It's like it's part of the parcel. Yeah, it is part of the parcel. Let's talk about the resting players thing quickly. So a lot of people are asking, should we be resting players? Should we be giving guys a break? Particularly guys like Sean, who are obviously carrying a knee injury, a quad injury. Then you just mentioned DWZ, Wade Egan if he's nursing something. Where do you sit on it, Kempy? Where do you sit on should we be resting guys if we lock up third spot this weekend and it doesn't really matter what happens against the Dolphins?
Well, the resting comes in a lot of different opportunities. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you've got a 7-day turnaround. You play Friday night, you play on the following Friday night, you've got 7 days in between. And your training systems may change where, for instance, Mitch Barnett may need, 2-3 days off so that his leg can heal and he's not ripping that open every time he moves in a running motion around the paddock. So you can rest players during the week. Now, that's entirely up to the coaching staff. You've got, but now there's a better understanding. You've got all your S&C guys and your mental coaches and all sorts. So this is a real balancing act for Andrew Webster. Like, how does he make sure that in 2 weeks' time, like Sione said, that you're going to go to that next level? Because it is.
Totally.
I've always said that. Like, when you get to the semis, mate, it's totally different. It's a new game. And you've got to get them to that position where they're ready to go. Me personally, I don't think he can afford to rest anyone, Sam. I think 2 weeks' time, he either finishes 5th if he starts resting people, or he possibly could go up the second spot. Given if the results go their way, that's the best and worst scenario. But the safest scenario is dealing with St. George and the Dolphins and finishing in the top 4.
I can't help but think Kempy just a little bit over the last couple of weeks they have looked tired a little bit. Some of the guys have just looked
they get
a
a week
tired.
off. If they go in and win the first game in the semi-finals, they get a week off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I'm on the fence on it because I see both sides. I see not resting guys because unlike Ivan Cleary, who knows exactly what his team is capable of in the finals, and they know as well because they've been there before, he can rest guys because he goes, boys, we've done it before, we know what we're doing, you know what level you have to go to, you know how tough it is, away you go. For a team like this with Webster under his first year, he needs them to be as consistent and together as they can be heading into the finals. In that regard, you need to keep them together. But at the same time, all I've ever heard from guys who have been to the finals, guys like Sione, guys that we've had on talking about that run to the grand final in 2002 or 2011, is you don't want to be gassed by the time you get to that grand final. You don't want to have used all your energy to get there and then find that you're not there on the day.
Yeah, so they didn't, when they got to that grand final, they didn't get there from the top four. Okay, they got there from outside the top four. Yep, they never won the grand final. Okay, that's so no one's ever won it from outside there. So the top four gives them that opportunity to have a break. And if they win, yep. So that's one opportunity. The second one is you've also got to understand that Dylan Walker's been to a final and won one. Aidan Whanua-Blake, Tohu Harris have been to internationals and understand big game times, along with Sean Johnson, who's been to a number of final series and internationals, along with Dallin.
But as a team,
though. Yeah, okay. So one of the things that people aren't talking about is the experience inside the Warriors team of finals football or big game football. They actually have enough in that nucleus of their team
100% they do.
To understand how to prepare and get the blokes around them to prepare. They are going to get excited come the first week. Don't worry about that. And it's not about getting excited. It's about making sure they don't get into a game like they have done against the Titans, Tigers and Manly, where I'm going to give you an opportunity to score a try and we're going to score a try.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to score a try and then we're going to score a try. Now, if that's Penrith, Brisbane, they're going to score 20 and their defence isn't going to allow you to score 20.
Yeah.
So that's what they need to fix.
I agree. 2 minutes here, Kemp, before we got to take a break. Who would you rather in the first round? Would you rather the Broncos at Suncorp or Penrith at Bluebet? Yeah,
look, I've put a lot of thought into this, and hopefully it falls our way and we finish on third. We've got Melbourne breathing down our neck, and we've got two big games. St George are going to come here. It's going to be another close one on Friday night. I'm picking. And then going up to the Dolphins, and I've seen teams have got nothing to play for in the last round. They're so relaxed, and they turn in an absolute barnstorm. So the Dolphins ain't going to be easy beats either. We don't want to finish fourth, okay? So we don't want to go to Penrith and have to win that game. And then up against the Premiers who, like you've just said, know how to do it and get that week off. I'd much rather travel up to Brisbane. I think there's an opportunity here if we're playing the Dolphins in and around that rest and recuperation and recovery that, like you talked about, is if they stay up there and get prepared and ready for the week against Brisbane, they will be in a good space. But the other thing too is that our support there, our network of people in Queensland is absolutely huge. And I think if we've got a 2 versus 3 game there, I think you're going to be really surprised at how many people show up to Suncorp that are wearing Warriors jerseys.
I'd be leaning towards the Broncos simply for the fact that they don't have what you just talked about, the experience. Like, they've got Adam Reynolds, I get that, and Reece Walsh, who's played Origin, and I guess Carrigan and Haas, but almost no one in that team apart from Reynolds has played finals football.
No, and
so
they've got a young side
who, might, in the shining lights, might just find themselves in a little bit.
If it becomes a grind.
Correct. And if the Warriors can get out to, say, like a 12-point early lead, all of a sudden they're chasing the game, and that's where guys like Reece Walsh start to make mistakes. So I lean more towards Brisbane for that regard. The only thing I don't like about that, or the only reason why playing Penrith in the first round does entice me a little bit, is if we lose to them, we then wouldn't have to meet them until the grand final. And I think the only chance to beat Penrith is in the one-off grand final game, as opposed to having to beat them twice.
I'd much rather beat them in the grand final and beat them, as opposed to lose the first one and mentally get the boys back up, saying that we've been there once and lost and we've got to go there again and try and beat them. Yeah. So it is like when we're talking about the semis are going to be a different kettle of fish, mate. The grand final is absolutely something different. So one game at a time, Sammy. Let's just hope that they finish third.
Yep. And a lot of other games around them, to be honest, Kempy, like Brisbane are going to be playing, do they play Melbourne in the final week? And Melbourne play, right. And who are Melbourne playing this weekend? We got the Sharks playing. We've got a lot going on around in the top 8 playing this weekend and next weekend that is going to influence.
So the Panthers are playing the Eels. That ain't going to be easy. You've got the Storm and the Titans. Yep. Of course, the Roosters up against the Tigers, so they should win that, which makes it, if Souths lose this weekend.
Well, South's got a bye, so they get 2 free points.
So they've got that one bye, so that game next week is all about the 8. And then you've got the Raiders up against the Broncos, which is normally a really good game. Yeah. And the Raiders are,
I think it's that final week that's really going to be a decider, between the top 8 and the top 4. You don't want to go
anywhere next week. You want to be sat down all weekend watching football.
I've got to take a break. When we come back, we might have a quick chat about the Dragons game this Friday night. Right, folks, we've actually cooked our ad breaks here. We've got to take another one very, very shortly. So you got 40 seconds, Kempy, to tell me why the Dragons are going to pose a threat on Friday night.
Well, they're going to pose a threat because they're actually playing all right. Their effort's big. They've got nothing to worry about going into the last two games. A new coach coming with a captain, Ben Hunt. Happy to stay, and you'll hear about that tomorrow when we talk to Jason Nightingale, who actually sits on the board at the Dragons, and the reasons why they got Ben Hunt to stay. So I think Ben Hunt, again, down like Daly Cherry Evans, he's going to organise that St George side around the pitch, mate, and they've got nothing to lose. So the Warriors just got to go out there and they've got to get these 2 points.
Right, it is a dangerous game. Another dangerous game for the Warriors on Friday night, Kempy. We do have to just take one more quick break when we come back. Get a couple of predictions from Kempy. Won't give you his first try score until Friday evening, but we'll get a prediction from him. Stay with us. Folks, we're going to have to try and get 2 hours again for this show leading into finals because there's just so many questions that we haven't even been able to touch on. We do appreciate them. We do see them all. We might even have to do a mailbag after the show 1 week. Kempy, just quickly before we do go, where's the game won or lost this Friday night?
Well, I think,
and a prediction.
Look, I think it's going to be close. I think 12 points and under to the Warriors is a lot like Manly. And for me, the game's going to be won or lost whether or not Sean Johnson can manage himself through this game and Ben Hunt has a shocker. So
this is what happened the last time we played them. So
yeah, that's it. And we beat them 48. I think it was 48-18.
Yeah.
And I think if you remember that game early on, they hung with us and then we blew them off the park. So I think the same thing's going to happen. If we can get through the first part of it, we'll do a number on them and get the 2 points.
That's running it straight for another week. Live commentary from Friday here on SENZ.
Yeah.